I had everything I ever wanted, a massive house, clothes I never wore, cars I forgot I owned. And yet, I felt trapped. The world applauded me on the outside, but inside, something didn't make sense. The more I had, the less I felt like I belonged to myself. This isn't a story about money. It's about everything it could never buy. And the day I realized that maybe the true cost of success was my freedom. If you've ever felt the same, you're not alone. Subscribe and join the quiet voices that finally found words. I remember the day clearly, standing in my 200 square foot home in suburban Connecticut, surrounded by everything I'd spent 15 years accumulating. Designer furniture carefully selected to impress guests who rarely visited. A 3-car garage housing vehicles I hardly drove. Closets bursting with clothes, many still bearing tags. My phone buzzed with a notification, another automatic payment to the storage unit across town, where I kept the overflow of possessions that wouldn't fit in my oversized house. $19 per month to store things I couldn't even remember owning. Something wasn't adding up. I had a high-paying job in finance, the dream home, the vacations, the stuff. By every traditional measure, I was wealthy. So why did I feel so constrained? Each purchase, each upgrade, each new acquisition seemed to add a weight I couldn't quite name. Was this what success was supposed to feel like? This suffocating sensation of being owned by the very things I possessed? I ran my fingers across the marble countertop I'd spent weeks selecting. "This is what winning looks like," I whispered to myself. But the words rang hollow in the empty kitchen. The pattern had started years earlier when I landed my first major bonus on Wall Street. I still remember the giddy feeling of watching my bank account swell with more money than I'd ever seen. The natural response seemed obvious: reward myself. A better apartment, a nicer watch, a wardrobe upgrade. Each new purchase delivered a fleeting high, a momentary burst of dopamine that felt like achievement. But the feeling never lasted. Within days, sometimes hours, I'd find myself browsing for the next acquisition, the next upgrade, the next fix. "Maybe I just need something bigger," became my unspoken mantra. A bigger apartment led to a house. A nice watch became a collection. A few good suits became a wardrobe that required a spare bedroom to contain it. My college friends started declining invitations to dinner. They couldn't keep up with the restaurants I insisted on choosing. My parents seemed uncomfortable during their rare visits, treating my possessions with a caution that made relaxation impossible. I dated people who were impressed by my wealth initially, but eventually drifted away, citing an emotional distance I couldn't understand. I was achieving everything I thought I wanted, yet feeling increasingly empty. The breaking point came during a company retreat in Montana. We stayed at a rustic lodge, and I found myself envying the caretaker, a man who lived in a tiny cabin on the property with his dog, a small library, and seemingly unlimited freedom. How could he look so content with so little, while I felt so burdened with so much? It was during a rainy Sunday afternoon, mindlessly scrolling through yet another online shopping site, that I stumbled across an article about something called the Diderot effect, named after an 18th century French philosopher. Denis Diderot had received a beautiful new dressing gown as a gift, but soon after his surroundings seemed shabby in comparison to this new possession. One by one, he replaced furniture and decorations to match the elegance of the robe. In the process, he fell into debt and found himself entrapped by these beautiful things that had once given him pleasure. I felt a shiver of recognition. This was exactly what had happened to me, but on a much larger scale. One purchase had led to another, then another, creating an endless cycle of consumption that never reached a satisfying conclusion. But the Diderot effect was just one piece of the puzzle. As I researched further, I discovered the paradox of ownership, the psychological phenomenon where the more we own, the more we feel anxiety about protecting, maintaining, and managing those possessions. Our possessions, intended to give us freedom and pleasure, begin to possess us instead. Each new acquisition didn't just cost me money, it cost me time, mental energy, and freedom. The new boat meant weekends spent on maintenance rather than sailing. The vacation home meant constant worry about security systems and property management. The art collection meant insurance policies and climate-controlled storage. I was experiencing what economists call diminishing marginal utility, but in a particularly cruel form where additional consumption was actually decreasing my overall happiness. I had crossed the threshold where more had become less. Once I saw this pattern, I began noticing it everywhere. My colleague Mark, with his constant phone upgrades, always chasing the newest model but never seeming more satisfied. My neighbor Janet, with her ever-expanding collection of exercise equipment gathering dust in her garage. Society itself collectively chasing an ever-receding horizon of enough. I thought about the ways this paradox manifests beyond material possessions. People who accumulate social media connections but feel increasingly isolated. Executives who amass power only to feel more vulnerable to competitors. Even information, how we can have access to more knowledge than any previous generation, yet feel less certain about what we know. This paradox explains so much about modern American life. We are collectively the wealthiest society in human history, yet anxiety, depression, and a sense of emptiness have reached epidemic proportions. We have confused having more with being more. What if true affluence meant having enough without the burden of excess? Small changes at first. I cancelled the storage unit without even looking at what was inside. I stopped the automatic browsing of online stores. I instituted a new rule. For each item that came into my home, 2 needed to leave. The most surprising discovery was how quickly my perception shifted. The kitchen that once felt inadequate without a professional-grade espresso machine now felt spacious and functional. The weekends, once spent shopping or maintaining possessions, became open expanses of time for relationships, experiences, and rest. 3 years later, my life looks dramatically different. The oversized house has been exchanged for a bright apartment in a walkable neighborhood. My possessions are fewer but more meaningful. My relationship with money has transformed. I see it now as a tool for freedom rather than a scorecard. I still work in finance, but with a new purpose, helping clients understand the distinction between financial wealth and genuine prosperity. Many are skeptical at first, just as I would have been. But the numbers don't lie. Anxiety decreases and reported life satisfaction increases when consumption becomes intentional rather than compulsive. The paradox I discovered isn't that money is inherently problematic, it's that we've been using it to purchase the wrong things. We buy objects when we crave experiences, we accumulate possessions when we need connection, we chase external validation when we hunger for internal peace. True wealth, I've learned, is not measured by how much you can hold on to, but by how much you can let go of without fear. It's found not in endless acquisition, but in the clarity that comes from knowing what's enough. The next time you feel the urge to solve an emotional need with a financial solution, pause and ask yourself, will this purchase own me or will I own it? The answer might surprise you and it might just set you free.